Hello ladies, thank you for joining me today. My name is Mandy and this is My Mandy Yoga. And today we're going to work on a pose called Downward Facing Dog. And you might be familiar with the pose. It's a common pose and it's kind of a pose that we can do that is kind of a whole practice in and of itself. So it's kind of a one size fits all. Maybe that's not quite the way to put that. Cut. We're going to cut that. Abner. Hello, thank you for joining me today. My name is Mandy and this is My Mandy Yoga. And today we're going to work on a pose called Downward Facing Dog. And you'll find this pose you can practice on a mat, and I prefer it just because it's going to keep your hands and your feet from slipping. And we'll kind of practice this in a couple of different positions for our hands and feet. So if you find one that you're not quite ready for, just kind of wait just a little bit. I'll work on the other variation too. So we'll find our way to hands and knees to begin. So find from here your hands and knees and kind of shift yourself so that your hands are kind of more up towards the top part of your mat, because it's going to make room for your feet and legs in a moment. And we'll find from our practice here, we'll curl our toes under, so we'll lengthen here. So we're going to get ready to do a plank. So if plank kind of makes you feel uneasy, don't even worry about this variation, but we'll find wrists and shoulders nice and lined up, and we won't be in the plank for very long. We're going to just use it to get the proper position of our feet. So we're going to find our wrists and shoulders nice and lined up, and we'll be nice and strong into our hands, arms, and shoulders. So already we're going to try to push the earth away from us and kind of keep this strength into our hands as we slowly draw our belly muscles in, and we'll start to lengthen our legs, curling our toes under. So we want to find this nice straight back line of the body. Then we'll press into our hands, lift our sits bones high, and sink into our heels. And so we just kind of allow our head and neck to just be nice and relaxed. If you want to find a focal point for gaze, maybe up towards the part of your thigh that's just above the knee. And we really sink into our heels. We really strong into our hands and arms and shoulders. And we'll slowly make our way down to hands and knees once more. So there are different variations for our downward facing dog. I practiced to begin with whenever I wasn't quite ready for the upper body strength involved. I kind of brought my hands and feet a little closer together for a long time. And it's not the variation that I prefer, but it does kind of help you to kind of settle into the stability of the pose. And you can also widen your feet a little bit more that way. So from here, we'll just find from our table pose, so I have my hands just a little bit further forward than I would in my traditional table. And we'll just go from here and curl our toes under, bring sits bones high, sinking into our heels. So this one might be a little bit more accessible for you while you get used to the strengthened hands, arms, and shoulders. And from here, you can take your feet a little wider. And sometimes I like to have my feet still on my mat though, just so that it kind of keeps that stability and we can find a lot of length here. We'll slowly make our way down to a little child's pose, and on the exhale, we'll shift our forehead down to our mat. And this inhale, let's make our way back up. So I'm going to go through that traditional downward facing dog with you first. So from here, we find our wrists and our shoulders nice and stacked. We find ourselves nice and strong and sturdy. Belly draws in. So we're going to create this nice strength into our shoulders. And we'll kind of create this doming of our back as we slowly curl our toes under, lengthen to your plank on your exhale. We'll bring our sits bones high, sinking into our heels. And we'll slowly make our way back down to hands and knees once more. On your exhale, you can find a full child's pose. Remember, you can have, if you did our pose of the week last week, you can have a little elevated hips here, forehead rests down. And that's our downward facing dog pose of our day or of our week here. So you can practice this pose again just by itself. Don't feel that you have to use this for any particular reason. Sometimes it just feels amazing for especially our backs and our hamstrings. And this can also be a counter pose to a lot of poses, especially standing poses or anything really that you want to counter pose for. Down dog, puppy, child's pose, all of those options are really great counter poses for any kind of pose that you're working on. And I always like, instead of just trying to hold downward facing dog for an extended period of time, I kind of go in and out of it, especially the first couple of rounds, and I go back into our child's pose that we did. So we kind of went up and down a few times. And I highly recommend that just until you can really build the strength into your shoulders and your arms. Because remember, we're not trying to have this practice to make our bodies sore. We want to make our bodies feel better. So until we can kind of build that strength, and it takes time. I feel like I've been working on my downward facing dog for about 10 years, and it's just now feeling good. So work on it. It's worth it. And if it's not your thing, no worries. And so thank you very much for joining me this week for our downward facing dog. Again, my name is Mandy, and I really enjoyed this time with you. Thank you so much.